Hey, who would have known? It's a YouTube Sports Network. It's been a few days since I've been on this network. It's been a few days since I've been connected to the internet, connected to the Wi Fi, and I just like to get right to it. The New York Giants visited the Dallas Cowboys this previous Monday night, and it was 23-16. And can you imagine? There was no surprises. I'm going to say it to you right now. Cooper Rush, Dak Prescott, it does not make a difference. Regardless who was in that quarterback, it would have been the same result. A bunch of boring, a bunch of tight playing. Let me actually take it easy with how I say it. I'm just a little off the top of my head because I'm in an area that I haven't been in a while, so I'm being a little ballsy. I'm being a little audacious. I'm being a little bit of an a-hole. But guys, a couple of notes I wrote down on my notebook here. First of all, 23-16. Cowboys got the best of the New York Giants in MetLife. For those of you right now, or those of you who have visited MetLife, who have been to a Giants game, who have been to a Jets game, right now you understand what it is to leave the stadium. Right now you know what it is to sit in traffic. It is by far one of the worst stadiums to catch an Uber, to catch New Jersey Transit, to catch a cab, to catch a ride. You're stuck. You're done. You have to wait at least an hour and a half to 2 hours before you arrive at the place where you left. It's going to be a while. Get used to it. The way they designed that stadium, they wanted you to suffer. They wanted you to struggle. They wanted you to be uncomfortable. They wanted you to have some type of anxiety because New Jersey knows how to stick it to you. Here's a few things I like to talk about. A couple headlines. I don't want to hold you guys up, but Dak Prescott. Dak wouldn't have done better than Coop. That's one of the things I wrote in my notebook. Dak would not have done better than Coop. This is one of those games that didn't really matter who was quarterback. It could have been Cooper Rush, who went 21 for 31 with 215 yards, one touchdown, no sacks by the Cowboys offensive line. They allowed no sacks. It is 68.5 QBR compared to a 41.6 QBR. Daniel Jones, who was drafted 6th overall. Think about it. Cooper Rush, who was not drafted during his time entering the league, had a 68.5 QBR. And Daniel Jones, who was drafted 6th overall, had a 41.6 QBR. Again, you can evaluate how you want. There's many factors: offensive line, talent, running back, offensive coordinators, head coach, bunch of stuff. Defensive coordinators, you can throw it in there too. But as of now, in my opinion, it didn't matter who was quarterback for tonight's game. I think that even if Dak Prescott was the quarterback of tonight's game, the final score would not have been much different than it is right now, 23-16. It was so typical of every other game that goes on between the Cowboys and Giants. It's going to be a grind. It's going to be a struggle. It's going to be flags. It's going to be penalties. It's going to be a couple plays here and there, turnovers, converting on third downs, maybe on a fourth down, maybe in the red zone, which the Giants did not enter according to the stats. And if you watch them, the Giants did not have a red zone possession. So there's a lot to like as far as the Cowboys are concerned, if you're a fan of the Cowboys. But at the same time, there's a lot to dislike because you're thinking to yourself, is this a team that could beat the better teams in the league? Now, first and foremost, if you're watching the Dallas Cowboys, you're thinking to yourself, Dallas Cowboys defense has to be taken serious. Last year, there was something and some type of unit. They were a unit last year that attracted a lot of respect. And the statistics showed it. There were a lot of players. Micah Parsons showed it. The analysts showed it. Anybody who was talking about the game showed it. Now, if you watched them, you noticed that there were some particular players that stood out. And in general, the Cowboys looked different than they did in years past. They weren't a hopeful defense. They were more of a defense that created. And that's why I thought the Cowboys did a great job by retaining Dan Quinn. Going into year two with Dan Quinn, it looks a lot like the same. And in fact, it looks like it could be a lot. If anything, it could be better than it was last year because you're getting contributions for not just Mika Parsons, but guys like Donovan Wilson. And in fact, if you really think about it, Dorrance Armstrong. And really, overall, it's just a sound structure because if you look at it, you're not hearing a lot of the names of the cornerbacks. You're not hearing Anthony Brown. You're not hearing, Trayvon Diggs, you're going to hear because he gets attacked. And if he doesn't get attacked, he's making a play. And regardless of the fact, like, I don't know if anybody's realizing last year, Trayvon Diggs had a great season, like, name-wise and a lot of publicity. But if you look at his stats, he got targeted a lot. He was one of those hit-or-miss corners. The guy that he's going to have a lot of picks, but a guy that is also going to give up some as far as yardage and touchdowns is concerned. So, and they hit on that during the broadcast today, especially Troy Aikman was saying that it's almost like a blast in the past where one of the greats, or the greats of the past, are going to be targeted. It's just, which is why they are considered the greats to begin with, because they're not just sitting out there in the background. They're actually a part of the picture from the beginning of the game to the end. Now, again, take that how you will. But what I'm saying is the Cowboys, there are those few players that are really making an impact, but overall, it's the camaraderie, the culture, and it's the scheme of what the Dan Quinn defense is putting forth, which is why the Cowboys might be considered a better defense than last year. You take it how you want. Anyway, 5 sacks on Daniel Jones in this game, 0 sacks on Cooper Rush in this game. And one thing I want to talk about, since we're talking about 0 sacks on Cooper Rush, 0 sacks on Cooper Rush, I want to pose this question. Why did Jason Peters get taken out of the game? Why did he get taken out of the game going into the half and for the remainder of the game? Why did Jason Peters, who is going to be a Hall of Fame induction when it's all said and done, and one day you're going to look back and you're going to say, oh, man, I didn't realize. Wow, I totally didn't even realize that. I didn't even know. Jason Peters, Hall of Famer. Did you realize that at one point in his career, near the end of his career, he was playing left guard for the Dallas Cowboys after playing left tackle for both the Buffalo Bills and the Philadelphia Eagles? It's one of those, if you weren't paying attention, you wouldn't even know. And in the short time that I was watching the game, I saw that Jason Peters was running, creating rushing lanes, and at the same time was allowing Dak to, talking about Dak and Cooper, was allowing Cooper Rush to throw the ball with some lanes, clear lanes. So why did Mike McCarthy and the coaching staff of the Dallas Cowboys take out Jason Peters in favor of the rookie, number 68, who at this point, I don't even know the name of, starts with an F? To my knowledge, it ain't Doug Free. And Doug Free, number 68 left tackle, at one point was the best lineman on the Cowboys not too long ago. And that says a lot. In fact, it was Travis Frederick, and yes, it was Martin. But at this point, I'm wondering, why did the Cowboys take out Jason Peters? I want to know why the Cowboys took out Jason Peters. I think there was something there. I think that Jason Peters, his presence, left guard, sitting right next to Tyrell Smith, has a lot to do. He can have a big impact on the development of their 24th overall pick in the 2022 draft. Why did the Cowboys take out Jason Peters in favor of the guy who's been there all year? Please, Faroki, what the hell's his name? I don't even, right at this current moment, the way I'm feeling, what I got in front of me, when I'm looking out to my right, what's in the oven, what I got my notepad, where my pen's at, who I'm talking to, who I'm texting, where I'm at currently as far as the state, the country, and the county, and most importantly, the city. If you guys only knew and the gals only knew, you would realize that at this current state in time, I don't really care how politically correct I am. The Giants, to me, are not a very good football team. And Brian Dable, however you want to describe and pronounce his name, he is not, in my opinion, quite frankly, the answer to the Giants' success in years to come. Want to get into it? Should we really get into it? So I was just thinking. I looked at this not too long ago. And I was looking at this. I said, you know what? Brandon gave him a lot of credit. Man, he was working with Josh Allen in Buffalo. He was working Josh Allen in Buffalo, yeah. So he must be something good. In 2009, Brian Dable was an offensive coordinator for Cleveland. And again, it's not really something to take home with you. It's not going to really blow you away. But Brian Dable, as the OC of the Cleveland Browns, they were 30 on offense. They were 32nd in yards, and they were 32nd, and they were 29th in points. 29th in points overall, 32nd in yards. The very next season, in 2010, as an offensive coordinator of the Cleveland Browns were 31st in points and 29th in yards. Take that as you will. Again, they were near the very bottom of the league as Brian Dable as an offensive coordinator during his early stints as in that role. Then you go to the Miami Dolphins. You got to roll with the Miami Dolphins, and he was 20th in points, and he was 22nd in yards. 20th in points and 22nd in yards. And those Miami Dolphins, during that time, after he was down with the Cleveland Browns, those Miami Dolphins finished at 6-10. That was the era of Tony Sparano and Todd Bowles. Can you think about that? Tony Sparano and Todd Bowles. It's crazy because, I almost feel like I remember that like it was yesterday. Todd Bowles was our head coach. Tony Sparano was the interim. The other way around. Tony Sparano was hired. I know he was an offensive line coach. And then Todd Bowles took over. Either way, two names that are known in the football circle. But as of now, Todd Bowles being the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Either way, what I'm getting at is Brian Dable, as a relatively unknown, moved on from the Cleveland Browns to become the Miami Dolphins offensive coordinator. He was ranked 20th in points, 22nd in yards. And after that, he got a job with the Kansas City Chiefs, and he ranked at that point 32nd in points and 24th in yards. So at this point, Brian Dable ranked as an offensive coordinator 29th in points, 31st in points, 20th in points, and then 32nd in points in his first 4 gigs at offensive coordinator. And it took him at that point 6 years later, arguably 6 to 7 years later, from the 2012 Kansas City Chiefs, before Alex Smith and Andy Reid. He then moved on to become the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills in 2018. And that was just about the year that Josh Allen arrived, if I'm not mistaken. And that season, he ranked 30th in points and 30th in yards. So not much improved with Brian Dable going on from the Browns to the Dolphins to the Chiefs to later on 6 to 7 years later with the Bills. So Brian Dable as offensive coordinator did not prove in that time, during that time span, to improve his team at all. And it was the very next year, 2019, 23rd in points, 24th in yards. And even then, with Josh Allen there, they still did not crack the top 20 in yards or points. It only took for them to move on to the 2020 season when things started getting out of control between the pandemic and the change and the mindset of the NFL moving on from there's less contact, there's more of the, let's look out for the safety of the players, which I'm not totally against. But at that point, Josh Allen was taking off naturally, organically in the 2020 season. The Buffalo Bills at that point ranked 2nd in points, 2nd in yards, and last year, 3rd in points, 5th in yards. So in the maturation process, organically, of Josh Allen's career, Brian Dable is being credited and being rewarded for that time. But he does not have Josh Allen right now, currently, with the New York Giants. And who knows if he's ever going to find another player like Josh Allen. So please explain to me how Brian Dable and his staff, who they're very young, Mike Kafka, I believe, from the Kansas City Chiefs, who during his time, you can make the same argument, is getting credit for the maturation process of Patrick Mahomes. So these guys are benefiting from the names that they were associated with. So it's anything like not guilty by association, but benefiting by association. Dabble through Josh Allen and Kafka through Patrick Mahomes. And if you really pay attention to the New York Giants this season, and I read somewhere earlier today how they were saying that Troy Aikman wasn't really buying the Giants 2-0 start. And if you really think about it, and if you have NFL Plus, NFL Premium Plus, NFL, what used to be NFL Game Pass, you can go back and watch every single game, every single play from the Giants' first two games, and you will realize between the Titans and the Panthers, two teams who I had in my power rankings ranked near the middle of the 20s, early 20s to the middle of the late 20s in power rankings. That's the Titans and the Tennessee Titans and the Carolina Panthers, who in my eyes are very great football teams and who are kind of in a way similar to the Giants. The Giants have won those games but did not dominate, did not show much other than the fact that they're playing teams who weren't spectacular and teams who had their own glaring needs and their own glaring holes in the way they conducted themselves, that the Giants were able to pull off victories. So what I'm getting at, and what Troy Aikman was getting at, is that I'm not particularly impressed with the Giants. And I had them coming into this Week 3 power rankings. If I'm not mistaken, I got to look back on it. I think I had them near the 19 to 22nd range. And the reason why I had them at that point is because I thought to myself is that the Giants, if they are going to beat the Titans and they are going to beat the Panthers, who really and realistically might just very well finish near the middle of the pack at the end of the year, 2022. Both of those teams might finish near the middle of the pack, because the Titans have a great coach in Mike Vrabel. They have a great running back in Derrick Henry, and they know how to grind their way to victories here and there. Okay, so they're gonna realistically probably be around 500 by the end of the season. And as far as the Panthers are concerned, they have a really good defense. And it looks like, if you're really not paying attention, it looks like Baker Mayfield has a possibility to improve on his play from the last few seasons, or last couple seasons in Cleveland. If you really look at it and study it, you can see why Baker at one point said, I think there's a chance that I can thrive a little bit here in Carolina. You just have to really look at it, and you might come to the same conclusion that I did. And it might come to the same conclusion with that little bit of improvement by Baker, the system they have in place, and that the defense that they have there, that the Panthers might be more towards 6 to 8 wins this season, maybe 7 to 8 wins. They might get some tough wins that you probably aren't going to expect them to get, but there's something there. And as I look to my right, at this current moment, literally on cue, the Rangers in the replay just scored their third goal of the first period. It's 3-0 Rangers over the New York Islanders with 3.7 seconds left in the first period. And what I'm thinking about, and what really catches my eye, is the graphic that the MSG Network had. MSG Network. Slow your roll, Dev. Slow your roll, compy. What really catches my eye is that the graphic that the New York Rangers have up, and they have every single season, if you really think about it, they always change a graphic. The scoreboard was what I'm getting at. And if you look at it right now, I actually really like the scoreboard. It looks good. I think you should keep it. And if you really know what I'm talking about, you would agree with me. Anyway, what I'm getting at, Brian Daboll might be a fraud. That's what I'm thinking. If you're a Cowboys fan, you got to be thinking to yourself, CeeDee Lamb got to go. He's boring. He's got nothing going. He's not tough. He's a complainer. He's a prima donna. If you looked at him when he got drafted, he pulled the phone right out of his girl's hand and said, you ain't touching this. This is the YouTube Sport Network, and if you realize what I'm talking about, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. Another thing, another thing, another thing. That turf, that turf, they gotta get rid of that turf. They gotta get rid of that turf. There are too many injuries on AstroTurf, on the turf, on this. What did I call it? There are way too many injuries on this artificial turf. Guys are getting hurt by just moving, by just doing natural football movements, by doing natural athletic movements. There are too many injuries in Sterling Shepard. After last year getting hurt, I believe, by his Achilles, now looks like he might have an ankle or a knee injury. And it happens way too many times where guys are getting hurt by just running and moving on AstroTurf. They need to go back to the regular stuff. They need to go back to turf, grass, the natural surface. Please stop thinking that you're doing yourself a favor by not having it attend to the ground. Do yourself a favor. Get more with earth. Get more with the natural elements of how we live, and cater to the ground that you are nurturing. Nurture the ground. Nurture the ground, because guess what? Too many athletes are getting hurt on this artificial turf. And my knowledge, it started happening with the Atlanta Falcons. All those guys, Deion Jones, to my mistake, if I'm not mistaken, Deion Jones, Keanu Neal, those guys got hurt with the turf. I mean, give me so many other examples. Too many guys are getting hurt while they're operating on this artificial turf. Go back to the natural surface. Get paid a handsome sum for the responsibilities that you have to cater to the turf, to the grass. Please have some fucking pride in doing that, because I'm tired of seeing all these injuries of guys just living and working and doing their job, but they got to get hurt because this stuff is not natural. Okay? I'm done here. I'm over. See ya.